But coming back from this trip and catching up with the Jewish publications that I receive, I'm just smitten between the eyes at the velocity of this remarkable change and this extensiveness, which sets the whole stage for the persecution that we know will come. So I just want to quote from the best of these articles here and there, just to sound the highlights to alert those that are joined with us in these concerns. In a remarkable article from the New York Magazine written by a Jewish writer, Craig Horowitz, who quotes different Jewish authorities. One is Foxman, who's the head of the Anti-Defamation League, very much concerned with the new film Under Passion by Gibson as being anti-Semitic and will stir up feelings against the Jewish community, which it likely may. And that the same man warns that the threat to the safety and security of the Jewish people is as great, if not greater, than what we faced in the 30s. Of course, what we faced in the 30s was the rise of Nazism. So if this exceeds that, what a portent that is. Part of the reason for this is that there's a new problem and an enemy that hasn't been seen before. It's the result of the burgeoning anti-Israel, anti-Zionist emotion, which is obtaining a kind of political correctness throughout the world. Instead of representing an off-the-wall gutter slum mentality, it's a respected political position to be anti-Israel and to see Israel as being analogous to Nazi Germany and Sharon, the prime minister, as being the equivalent of Hitler. These kinds of parallels, I mean, are an astonishment. Maybe some uneducated jerk can make a statement like that, but people at the highest levels are saying and supporting these things, and this is what is so frightening. It's politically correct. It's accepted. A British professor refused to have an Israeli student working in his laboratory because he had been at one time in the Israeli Armed Forces. And he received a mild reprimand from his academic institution, but not a dismissal. Things like that. Denmark, countries that have been supportive of Israel, are now refusing her products. Oranges, the kinds of things that have wide circulation in European markets, are affecting the Israeli economy. So there's a remarkable, massive reaction against Israel as being the oppressor and the persecutor. And as I said in my newsletter article, out of the perplexity of preserving themselves in the face of terrorist bombings, they themselves are using a measure of force and violence which is construed by the world as being racist, genocidal, all the kinds of things that would be the last thing to be associated with Jews who only 50 years ago were the victims of those things and now being looked upon as the great perpetrators. So there's a shift. Talk about paradigm shift. There's a remarkable and radical shift in the world in its attitude, not only toward Israel, but toward the Jew. That's the frightening thing, this equation. So that Jews in France, Jews in England, Jews in Germany are in danger. And the rabbi, the chief rabbi of France, had to make a public statement to the Jewish community, to the men, don't wear your head coverings in the street. Don't be identified as a Jew. If you have to have your head covered, wear a cap that would not identify you as a Jew. That a Jew should be afraid of being recognized in such places as France, England, and Germany is already a token of the remarkable thing that is taking place with such velocity. As I've said, he was from Bulgaria. He was from Israel, came to Bulgaria to head up the Lubavitcher outreach, and had never known anti-Semitism until he walked the streets of Sofia, Bulgaria. And kids from the school, seeing him with his black beard and yarmulke, came running over and started calling him Jew and names. It was altogether a new dimension of experience, which is why I think he allowed us to pray for him, knowing that we were believers, which is also kind of an interesting and maybe a significant factor. So what only 2 or 3 years ago would have been considered hateful, naked bigotry is now a legitimate political position. The irony here is that Israel, which was supposed to be the solution to centuries of anti-Semitism, is providing a flashpoint and a provocation for anti-Semitism. The most critical question of the day is, why has the world turned against us, and what is to be done about it? And in another article by a precious, aged Jewish commentator, in another publication I receive, where he gives his own statement of Islamic terrorism as being insoluble, cannot be corrected. Islam cannot be educated. It's intrinsic to their whole nature of their religion and their culture. They prefer dictators and single-minded in their desire for the destruction of Jews. He said, let us remember that the Palestinians dance in joy after every terrorist attack, including the destruction of the New York financial towers. When they came down, there was celebration in the West Bank on the part of Arabs, and throughout the whole Islamic world as a great victory. His article ends on this nostalgic note. Israel is no doubt a bastion of democracy when the Palestinian leadership is a stronghold of terrorism. Let the world take the necessary steps to eradicate terrorism. If, God forbid, they do not do so, who knows what dangers the world will face. He might well have said, if they do not do so, who knows what dangers Jews in the world will face. Well, I can tell him with all assurance, the world will not find an answer, and that this will work itself out with a terrible devastation to Jews worldwide. There's nothing that can be done against it. And in fact, maybe in this article or elsewhere, the demographics of Arab increase in their birth rate and the declining birth rate among Israelis and Jews means that within the next 10 years, not only will Israel be overrun and be made a minority within its own borders, but in the United States, where Jewish presence and influence has been a political factor toward and for Israel and the Jew, the increasing Islamic presence in America will outdistance them and become a political factor that politicians will recognize and cater to, which is already happening in France. 500,000 Jews, one of the largest Jewish communities of Europe, but 5